Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor to introduce you to our featured photographer, Jimmy Nelson. He is not just a photographer, but an artist, creating the most luscious portraits of disappearing tribes that are on the brink of extinction. Okay. His photographic eye respectfully, in reverence, shows people in great detail dressed in their traditional costumes amidst an amazing background, reminding us of portraits of the past, or portraits of Sitting Bull, Chief Sitting Bull, or Irving Penn's incredible portraits of Moroccan culture. But I don't want to waste time, and I know Jimmy is the one who doesn't like to be flattered too much, so I'm going to enjoy this as much as you will, hopefully, and let him and his amazing photographs, which I'm going to flatter, speak for themselves. So, Jimmy, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Is my microphone on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm very happy that you're all here. I'm extremely flattered to be here. I spent a couple of years of my youth living in Karachi in the early 70s, and I also spent some time working in northern Pakistan in the late 80s, but I haven't been back here since. So when I was invited to come today, I jumped at the opportunity. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is, it is about vanishing cultures and traditions, tribes, indigenous peoples, but it's also a little bit about me. And I think it's very important that you understand who I am in context to what I try and do. Also, the fact that this conference is essentially educational as far as I can see and understand. I will also want to share my sort of own personal and continual development as a human being, and why it takes me to the places that I go to, and why it pushes me to do the things that I do. It's quite a personal story. So are you prepared?
Yes.
Okay, so it's very broad, so hold on to your seats, okay? I'm going to begin with the pictures. But nothing comes on the screen yet. Oh, here we go. Now we're going to go back one. We're going to go back to here. Yeah. This is a symbolic beginning. I was kindly introduced as a photographer. I do take many pictures. I've been taking pictures for about 35 years, but I don't see myself as a photographer anymore. Why? Because of this. I think we're all the same, and that's actually quite exciting. I think the whole world has become a photographer. The whole world takes pictures all day. I have 3 teenage kids. They take 20 selfies a day on average. If you imagine, so that's 3 kids, 20 a day. If I'm appalling at maths, but let's put 60 pictures. So 60 pictures go online every day. That accounts, somebody told me the other day, Google, for more than 3 billion pictures being put online or into the cloud or wherever they go into the atmosphere every day. 3 billion images. I mean, that's phenomenal. That means that we're all photographers. I think for the few traditional photographers that still existed not so long ago, this was a terrifying fact, because perhaps that profession was going to die. But in actual fact, I think it's glorious, because I think for the very, very first time, we as human beings actually have one language we can now communicate with each other, and that's imagery, that's photography. And it's not only photography of others, but it's ultimately photography of ourselves. We spend the whole day analyzing, who am I, where do I fit, what do I look like, am I handsome, am I ugly, am I fat or am I thin, how do you see me, and ultimately how do we see one another. So what I want to talk to you about this morning is basically along those lines, how I perceive myself, and on that journey of my own self-perception, how I've ended up perceiving others. And the fact that it's all relevant to us because we're all photographers. I'm no more or less than you, we're all making these images all day. And I'm going to take you on a sort of bit of a journey to begin with. I'm 48 years old, and I spent the whole of my life traveling from very, very early. And my father was a geologist. And you would think at my age of 48, I had enough experience not to get into the, can I swear? Not to get into the shit I got into a few months ago. And I'll explain what happened. I'm here in Sudan, southern Sudan, and I'm doing this project, and somebody said, oh, Jimmy, you know, in Sudan, in southern Sudan, there's a group of people called the Mundari, and the Mundari are a tribe, and they've never been photographed and never been filmed before, and they're sitting on this island, because for the last 40 years, southern Sudan's been in a war, and nobody's ever got there. Can we take you there? I said, oh, great, you know, guns, and, I've got a family, is it safe? And they said, yeah, no, it's fine, it's a ceasefire, everything's calm, so please come. So I sort of naively went, I travel with a camera lady who films me and is writing a book. And we arrived in Juba, the capital, and Juba is wild. It's like do any of you remember the first Star Wars film?
Yeah.
Star Wars, that bar scene where Harrison Ford walks into and the Jabberwockies there and all those creatures, and with all due respect to the Southern Sudanese, it felt a little bit like a bar in Star Wars. And we came off the plane, and it's 40 degrees centigrade, it's desert, it's wild, there's been a war there for 40 years. So it really, really is the edge of the earth. And then this massive man came up. He was about 2 meters tall, as dark as the night, very handsome, very strong. And he said, "Oh, no, my name is Bob." I said, "Hi, Ali, I'm Jimmy, this is Stephanie." He says, "I'm here to protect you." And I said, "Well, great." And he said, "Well, I'm going to take you to the Mundari." So we sort of got into Ali's car, and he was this big, extraordinarily handsome, sort of gorilla-esque of a character. He was driving, and he said, "I have something to tell you." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he says, "Yeah, do not be worried. The next few days, many roadblock." And I said, "Roadblocks? Yeah, we are here in a war, and many people have guns, but no worry. Keep smiling, keep laughing, make joke, everything's fine." So I said, okay. So we got into the car, and we started driving. We sort of drove off into the desert, and within an hour, the roadblock turned up. And big guys, handsome guys, extraordinary, statuesque people, all by the edge of the road, and a little bit nervous, and I said, "No worries, making joke, big smile, everything's fine, no problem, we move on." So on the first day, I think every hour we came across a roadblock. So essentially it became a bit like traffic lights. Oh, there's another traffic light, 10 guys on the road with guns, tell a bit of a joke, and it goes to green, and off you drive. First day, fine, we ended up camping, and so, we were sort of getting quite used to this. It was hot, it was an adventure, and Ali big and strong, and everything's safe. Second day, we got into the car, started driving. Early morning, lots of traffic lights, roadblocks, traffic lights, describe them as you will. And then around midday, the sun is hot, and you can imagine it's just desert, empty desert, and 40 degrees, searing heat. And in the distance, there's a bigger roadblock than normal. And we looked at Ali, and Ali was a little bit quiet. And we drove, and we got closer and closer. And there were probably about 20 kids in this roadblock. Now, have any of you ever seen the film with Leonardo DiCaprio, Blood Diamond?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so it's a fantastic film, and it's very vivid. That scene when he drives down to the bridge, remember he has the priest in his car, and there are 2 kids standing on the bridge with red eyes carrying Kalashnikovs. This wasn't a bridge, but it was the equivalent. There were 20 kids, now 20 teenagers. I had teenagers, they're wild, and they only live in Amsterdam, but here are 20 in the middle of Sudan. They're all naked, they all have a Kalashnikov each, and their eyes are red. And their eyes are red because they're eating pot, it's a sort of a drug. And for the very first time on this journey, Ali's back began to hunch, and the hair stood on end, and he started sweating profusely. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "No, this is a problem." And I said, "What do you mean it's a problem?" And he went very quiet, and I looked at Stephanie, my partner, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, it's fine, it's just a roadblock." And Ali was shaking his head, and he went very, very quiet. We slowed down, and there were these 20 kids, and they came to the car. 10 of them jumped on the roof, and they started banging very profusely, banging with the guns. The others were banging on the window, essentially saying, "Get out, get out." And I looked at Ali and said, "What do we do?" And he says, "You just have to get out." And I said, "But we can't, it's dangerous." And he says, "It's beyond danger, we have no choice anymore." So we got out of the car, and Ali said, "Get down, get down, get down." So we all got on our fours. And I looked at him, and I said, "Are we okay?" And I looked at Stephanie, and Stephanie, she started crying. And I said, "Ali, we're okay." And he goes, "No, we are in big shit. This is a real problem." And these kids were shouting and they were screaming, and it was a real sort of a tsunami of adrenaline. I've never been in a situation like that before. And I had this sort of moment of, it felt a little bit like drowning. I felt, oh my God, that everything started sweeping over me in the tsunami of emotion and of memories of thoughts. And I thought, perhaps this is it. Perhaps this is the end. Perhaps after 48 years of these experiences, these journeys, these discoveries, these pictures and these films that I've been making, I've made a mistake. I've ended up in a situation I should not have been in. And I was very angry with myself. Why am I here after all this experience ending up in such a dangerous situation? And I looked at Ali and I said, what do we do? What do we do? And he says, "There's nothing we can do. You just have to put your head down and pray." And I remember sort of putting my head down and saying, "I don't believe in anything. I don't believe anything. What am I going to do?" Okay, I'm going to stop this story here briefly and come back to it later, okay? So you have to remember where I was, okay? My head in the sand, Stephanie and Ali crying, me looking for somebody to pray to, although I don't believe in anybody. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit in time and put it into context why I'm sitting with my head in the sand in southern Sudan only a few weeks ago. But I've got to go back a long period of time. This is when I was 7 years old, okay? This is when it gets a little bit personal, but it puts it into context. I spent the first 7 years of my life traveling around the world with my father, and I got to the age of 7 and they said, okay, Jimmy, we can't teach you here in the bush, but they're going to teach you in England. We're going to send you to a boarding school. And I'd never really been to England. And they said, it's fine, it's got 400 priests and 1,000 boys and lives on a mountain. It's a bit like Harry Potter, but with no magic. Harry Potter wasn't around then, but in hindsight, you look back. And so I went to this school at the age of 7. It's a very small child, you're very vulnerable. They bought me a pair of shorts, a British Airways bag, and a tennis racket, and they said, everything will be fine, you'll become a man. And so I went off to the school, and it was interesting. I'm not going to go into too great detail, but there were lots of priests there, and they weren't necessarily all there for the greater education of children. And that's another story. So I sort of experienced a few things you shouldn't experience as a small child. And I got to the age of 16, and twice a year I saw my parents living in different parts of the world, backwards and forwards. So I had this extreme contrasting childhood of living in the bush to living in this institution. And I got to the age of 16 and I was on vacation in Sierra Leone and I had cerebral malaria. So I was sort of a little bit of a strange childhood, suddenly became very ill, and I remember looking at my parents saying, Mum and Dad, I'm quite sick, I think I should stay at home. And they go, no, we don't know how to look after you. We've not ever really looked after you. But those priests we pay a lot of money for, they all look after you. And I said, well, they do, but not in the way you think. And so I was put back on this plane, I was sent back off to England, and I was very ill, very insecure, very worried. And I went to this priest, and I said, I'm sweating, I feel really ill. I think I've got malaria. Malaria has nothing to do with malaria. You've got the flu. We're going to give you this nice big pot of antibiotics, and everything will be okay in the morning. I said, fine. So I took these antibiotics, and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I woke up looking like this. All my hair fell out. It's called alopecia totalis, and it happens regularly. Most of the time people put on wigs or it falls out of patches and it grows back. As you can see, it didn't grow back with me. Somewhat irrelevant when you're 48 because half of Amsterdam walks around with bald heads these days, so I've suddenly become normal. But at the age of 16, you wake up and you look in the mirror and you meet somebody else. Now this is sort of a widely confronting experience, and as we were here talking about education and children, it's a very sort of fragile age, and to be confronted by another identity is mind-blowingly complicated. And I think the only way I solved it, because nobody could actually really help me, is I ran away, as teenagers generally do. And I think where I live in Amsterdam, it's sort of quite a wild environment. Teenagers, they sort of they jump on motorbikes, or they take drugs, or they become something else, or they pierce themselves. And I sort of decided to run off to the one place in the planet where I felt I could find empathy. And this is not very scientific. And I found empathy because of Tintin. Do you know Tintin?
Yes.
Yes. And I remember as a little boy reading Tintin and thinking he was amazing, and seeing Tintin running around the Himalayas with lots of little monks. So I thought, with my bald head, and I put on a red robe, the one place in the world I could hide and fit in and find empathy was with all these little monks in Tibet. So I literally bought a one-way ticket at the age of 17 to Beijing, got on a train, got to the border of Tibet, and I started to walk. And I spent 1.5 years walking across Tibet. This was in 1985, 86. Tibet had been shut for about 30 years. And on that journey, two things happened. One, I felt I was loved, sounds very melodramatic, by people who I didn't speak their language, didn't understand, but they sort of held me, they kept me warm, and they said, we'll look after you, we'll protect you on your journey. They didn't judge me for the way I looked, or who I spoke, or what I did or didn't believe in. It was just one human being seeing another. And I made a few pictures, happy snaps. I had a little camera and all the Russian Zenit B, and I had 4 rolls of Kodacolor gold, color negative film. I remember looking on the back of the box, and you could see the sun, the moon, the rain, and the stars, and that would tell you where you could set your camera on. And I came back with 4 rolls of film after 1.5 years. And those pictures were published, and that's what initiated on my career as a photographer. And I remember not long after that, having a number of journeys, having quite a few adventures, meeting this man, not literally, but metaphorically. This man's name is Edward Curtis. Do you know about him? Okay. If anybody needs, we all need people to inspire us. We all need our sort of icons. And this man became, and still is, my icon today. He spent 30 years of his life in the American West photographing the Native American Indians. But he didn't just photograph them, he recorded them, and he wanted to make them into idols. And he saw the developments in America, and he was screaming, but these people are important, this culture is important, this heritage is important, this is a wealth we have to cherish. And when he died, his 30 volumes, 95% were destroyed. He died bankrupt, He died in shame because he said, shame on you, Edward Curtis, shame on you for highlighting the poor and highlighting the indigenous, because they're nothing, they're worthless, they're backward, they're primitive, they need to be thrown in the bin as with you and as with your work. Most of that happened until in the late 70s, the 1% of his work which still existed was hiding in a basement in New York, and it's emerged, and the contemporary American culture looked at it and went, wow, look at what we've lost, and in a strange way, look at what we've become. And you've only got to look at America today, with what's going on there this very moment in time, to see how far removed, in my opinion, they are as human beings from here. That's not to say that Americans should all be running around wearing leather and feathers in their head, but it is to say that they have lost something very, very, very valuable, a deep, deep, deep cultural heritage and pride. And on the strength of Edward Curtis, and because the world has become so globalized, I think I'm probably trying to copy him, but on a global scale, by saying, look around the planet, look, there are some extraordinary indigenous cultures and peoples that still exist. They don't have to stay like this. It's not that, we have to go and join them and stand on a rock holding a shield wearing a skin, but it's that we have to have a greater understanding of each other's values and each other's wealth, because we live in a very developing society with a material wealth. The majority of these tribes, cultures I've been visiting over the last few years don't have a material wealth, but they have a very, very deep cultural, spiritual wealth and a connection with the nature, which is very valuable to us, and I want to discuss this with you now. So for about 5 or 6 years, I was intensely traveling, and then about 2 years ago, I published a book. We were talking earlier about books. I hadn't published many books, so I wasn't really aware of what I was doing. And something quite strange happened. It became successful is relative, but it generated a lot of interest. The title was called Before They Pass Away, and it became very controversial because people said, well, nobody's dying. And I said, well, I know nobody's dying, but I want to make a statement. Something is dying, we're losing something. So an enormous online debate started, and the debate at the beginning was very positive. And then, oh, Jimmy, we love your pictures, amazing, amazing, amazing. And then slowly the debate began to evolve. And people started saying, well, who are these people, Jimmy? And where are they? And then it got even further. Jimmy, aren't you like this Edward Curtis guy? And so, well, it's a compliment. So we're not complimenting you, we're actually criticizing you. These people are fake. These people don't exist. You fabricated them. This is a lie. And this is a discussion which happened and is still happening today, and I want to discuss with you briefly. It became so interesting that in America we had Facebook. There was a court case that was started against me because I was Jimmy Nelson, the tribal pornographer. And I thought that was very amusing, coming from the part of the States. And then it got even further. A man started accusing me of wrong-headed obsession with vanishing indigenous peoples. Now, wrong-headed it is not at all, and I will validate that in a few minutes. But obsession it is. It is a massive obsession. Massive obsession whereby today, this is only a few weeks ago, these are the pictures I'm still making today. This is in the Marquesa Islands in northern Polynesia, some of the most truly fantastic indigenous cultures and landscapes you will still see on the planet today. So when I was doing it 30 years ago, 2 years ago when I published the book, or today, this was literally a few weeks ago. And this is a few weeks before that, this is a chart. But I want to begin with a story. I know your name, I forgot. Actually, come. I need you to come on the stage. I'm not going to jump off. I'm going to stand here. Okay. The most important thing, you're going to be my assistant to begin with, is a bit of storytelling, and this is a bit of theatre to illustrate. Everybody goes, okay, well, Jimmy, whether it's right or it's wrong, these pictures, whether they do or they don't exist, and I say, well, they do, look at our magazines, is that the truth? Well, it's a different kind of truth. So I said, well, I want to photograph these people out there that cover of Vogue. I want to put them on a pedestal. I want to say, look at them, they're glorious, they're handsome, they're beautiful, they're strong, and they need to be celebrated. And they said, well, okay, Jimmy, let's say you're telling the truth. I am telling the truth. Okay, let's say, how do you communicate with them? You don't speak their languages, and how do you do it? And I said, well, this is essentially how I do it. So today we're in Papua New Guinea, okay? For the sake of argument, I'm being a little bit melodramatic so you understand it a little bit better. And you're the chief, but you're also a cannibal, okay? And you've got 30 friends around. And I arrive in your village, and I can't speak your language, yeah? I look completely different from you. I've got cameras, you don't know what cameras are, and in actual fact, you don't want me there, and you're scared of me. So don't say anything now, you're a cannibal, just stand there, look angry and dangerous, okay? Don't press any buttons, just look, run to me. Yeah. Very good, you've done this before. what we've practiced earlier. Okay, so when I arrive in your village, I have to make myself very small. Yeah? I have to give in straight away, and that's like whenever you have a dog or a pet, they sit and they lie on their back and they put their legs in their hands and they kick them and stroke them with your foot. You're the boss, so I have to physically show you that you're in control. So I arrive in your village and I make myself very, 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 very small. And your friends come up to me and you're angry, you spit at me, you kick me, don't literally spit at me. And you make lots of noises, you want to scare me. And I say within seconds, I'm terrified. Often I end up crying, often I am much the same as in Sudan. You become utterly humiliated. And you become very, very, very vulnerable. So that, but immediately, or not immediately, very quickly, the anger, the aggression sort of dissipates. And people start getting a bit bored. There's no fight anymore. There's no drama. This stupid guy from some other valley with no hair is sitting on the floor crying like a child. We've won. We can do whatever we want with it. So the pressure goes. And then everybody starts to disappear. But always what happens, there's always one person who remains. And today it's you. And you're still standing there looking at me and what on earth is this guy doing sitting on the floor crying? And then eventually we sort of kind of make eye contact, but I make sure I keep very still. I come up to you and I come a little bit closer and I go, I touch you and you flinch, and then I eventually touch your arm and go, oh, wow, you're so strong. Where did you get these muscles? This is amazing. And if you look at this, and kind of, oh, you're handsome. And those feathers in your hair, where did they come from? And then you start to praise, and it doesn't matter what language, but if you speak in a soft tone, and if you literally start worshipping it, I think you're beautiful, I think you're amazing. Wait, don't go. And immediately you create a curiosity. You say, wait there, look. And in my box, I'm going to take this from you a minute. In my box, I have an old plate film camera. Now, digital cameras are phenomenal, and I use them as well, but for this particular purpose, it's very, very valuable, because you'll see I'm quite an excitable personality. And this old camera is very slow, it's very cumbersome, and you have plate film. So there's only a couple of sheets, you have to build it onto the camera, and I start looking, and you become more and more curious, thinking this guy's getting weirder by the minute. And then eventually I start looking and focusing, and then I come up and you go, sit like this, there's the light up there, you're beautiful, stand up straight, breathe in through your nose, that's yeah, get the feathers going down, hold it, stay there, don't move. And I'm looking, and I'm about to make the picture, and then I measure the light, and I go, but it's too dark, I need more light. Oh, so I need some friends from the village, I can't come to you, friends from the village, come. So put down your telephones. Yeah. So and a few hours ago, you wanted to eat me with him, and all of a sudden I go, I need your help. Come, baby, come stand. Watch my cable, watch my time, okay, you see, you're going to be the chief light. You see the sun's up there. I'm going to give you a reflector, and you hold it, and you bounce the light on you. You've got to watch, so you've got to paint his face like that. Okay, stay there, don't move. Concentrate on the light. Don't move. And then you're going to come and sit down. Here, get down. And you see the face, you see the shadows from the light. I'm going to give you another reflector, and then you bounce the light. You should be looking up there, like you told us. I need more help. Come. And in the meantime, you're going to hold my umbilical cord so I don't trip over it. And where's my little note? You've become my assistant, okay? So concentrate, it's a difficult job, okay? So you're going to hold that reflector there. So before you know it, you have about 30 people from the village all holding these reflectors. And then you go back and you go, you're my assistant, follow me this way. Get down, don't press any buttons, okay? Okay, and then breathe in. But this whole dance sometimes takes about an hour to get the reflector, concentrate, what you do with your hands on your knees. Okay. And then you get there, and then you get back, and then you look through the camera and you think, oh shit, the sun's moved. The sun's moved. You've got to catch the sun like that, okay? And you go all the way around the village until everybody's completely forgotten. A few minutes ago, they wanted to eat you, and now all of a sudden they're shining light on you. But even you begin to understand, you start directing, more like here, more like here. And you say, come on, concentrate, and you're beginning to enjoy it. Breathe in, that's it, okay. And then eventually it's there, and everything's ready. It's like this enormous ongoing foreplay, and it's suddenly ready, shh. And everybody's forgotten that I was a threat, but everybody's focusing on you, the chief, because you're strong and you're powerful and you're beautiful with this golden light being reflected on your face if you're doing a good job, okay? So everybody's looking at it, and we're looking. I put the film in the camera, 5 seconds, shh, don't count, okay? Shh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if the picture's good and it comes out well, yeah! Everybody's so excited, it's a picture. And then you end up counting and we dance around. It becomes very exciting as you walk away, and then you come up and you go, I'm more handsome than you. You sort of grab yourself in your muscles and now your turn to look at me. You go and take the reflector then. Sorry, okay, it's your turn. We go through the whole process again. Okay. Breathe in, hands to reflect. You haven't finished yet. And this goes on for days and days and days and days until you photograph the whole village. Thank you. And then the next morning you're the chief, and I think I'll finish, and you come up to me, and it's the good thing of having a name like Jimmy. You go, Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. You go, what is it? And you go, Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. And he points out there, and over there, there's a whole other village from another valley. We've heard this crazy guy spends all day on his knees going, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're But it has nothing to do with photography. It has to do with being seen. It has to do with me truly believing you are special, truly believing that you're phenomenal. And in that process of me seeing you, you end up ultimately also seeing me and acknowledging me, admiring me, holding my hand, and the next morning becoming my chief assistant, helping photograph the whole of the other village. Yeah, thank you. Go sit down. You get a little bit confident and a bit cocky and say, wow, I can communicate to these people. I'm getting better at this. And, on my way here, I saw this waterfall. Oh, it was beautiful. This sort of extraordinary sort of, cascading sort of feature in the nature in amongst this valley. I would love to take the huli there. The huli I was photographing in Papua New Guinea, these sort of cannibals with this sort of statuesque wig that they make. I'd love to take them to that waterfall. But it's a 2-day walk. It's 2 days that I've got to persuade them to follow me back into the jungle. And then when you get there, to find the right position, to get them standing in all their pride and all their honor in front of the waterfall. And then you've got to get the light right, because it's all about the light and the composition and the mystery and the mystique. It's very, very, very complicated. But it's so, so, so exciting. Because in that process, you get these people to follow you into places they wouldn't normally go, and to do things they wouldn't normally do, for something they don't also truly understand what a picture is. But they do see that they're being seen, they're being honored, they're being admired, and they're being made into important icons. And if you get it right, you could end up with something like this. And it's just a picture, but the journey is magnificent. The journey you take yourself, where you go to, where you dare to, how you try to communicate, and the journey to put them in a light that they're not normally seen, the journey to put them in a light of respect. I remember a few weeks ago showing this picture to some children, and they said, that's like Avatar. And I said, it is. Strangely, one of the world's most watched films, one of the most lucrative films, with these blue digitalized characters in a sort of a fantastical way running through the jungle. This is very much like Avatar. These people are that proud, they are that beautiful, they are that connected, but they still exist. They still exist on the planet today. They're not a fantasy, but they're very rarely shown in such a dignified, beautiful, iconographic, respectful way. Okay, this is another journey. This is a cold journey. Cold in every way, mentally and physically. Chukotka. Chukotka, is anybody in Siberia? If you look at Siberia and you go to the far, far northeast, it's as far as you can go before you fall off the map, yeah? It's remote. It's bleak, it's isolated, but it's very, very, very beautiful. You can't hear it, but I'm saying there's nothing. It's beautiful, it's remote, it's bleak. I'll explain in a minute why I was there. And then when we arrived, this is just near the airport, we found this airplane missed the runway, and they sort of left it there in the snowdrift. So it really is the end of the world. I went there because there was in Chukotka the Chukchis, and they're sort of the last Eskimos. And again, I had this sort of fantasy sort of about photographing and filming these sort of last Eskimos. In the Northern Hemisphere, there are tens of thousands, actually in some cases millions of Eskimos, but they don't look or live or act in that traditional culture anymore, except for in Chukotka. So I've sort of done lots of research, and I found a Chukchi living in Anadir in the city. He said, oh, Jimmy, I've seen your project. I'll come and look after you in Chukotka. I said, great. So I sort of flew there, and I arrived, and I said, here I am, and I've got 2 weeks to come and find them. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, well, that's going to be a problem, Jimmy. And I said, well, why? He said, well, yeah, I forgot to tell you, I don't know where the Chukchi are. I said, what do you mean you don't know where the Chukchi are? Well, they're nomads. I said, but that's okay. I've just come from Papua New Guinea, and they're moving around. It's a big island. He goes, yeah, Chukotka is as big as France. I said, oh, okay, well, how many Chukchis are there? He said, well, there are only 80 split into two groups of 2. So you've got an area the size of France, it's minus 40 degrees centigrade, there are no features except for ice. It's cold, and there are two groups of 40 people moving randomly around who don't have mobile telephones. So I said, but how on earth are we going to find them? He goes, oh, that's easy. We're going to borrow my brother's tank. It's a Tundra tank. I can take 2 months of diesel and put it on the roof. 2 months? I can't come with you for 2 months. He goes, well, we may need 2 months to find them. And we're going to follow the reindeer. We're going to follow the reindeer droppings, because by the age and the distribution of the droppings, I can find where and how they've moved. So we sort of got into this tank. I was a little bit worried. And we spent 28 days in this tank. So that's 28 days of disappearing across the ice, sometimes sitting in blizzards. And after 28 days, you kind of sort of lose the plot. You sort of start thinking, am I sane? And then on the 28th day, we came over this mountain, and there's the tank, and there's the guide, and the cameraman sitting on the roof. And we saw this in the distance. This was like arriving, have any of you been to New York? That sort of idea you arrive. And this felt like a bit like arriving in Manhattan, one tent in the distance. So human beings, it got exciting. So we sort of came over, and I was like, we found them 28 days later. And around the tent, they were having this sort of minus 40 degrees picnic. And in amongst the picnic, there was this one man. And this one man was, for me, the epitome of who I dreamed of seeing in photograph. And I remember running out of the tank and running up to him and going, oh, it's amazing, you found you. I can't, no compliments, no nothing, I've got to get back, I'm late. Just sit still, I need to take a picture, we're going to turn around and go. I've only got today. He sort of looked at me and he goes, yeah, And he was very calm, very relaxed, as they probably are there. He looked and he goes, And all his friends looked at me and went, And he raised his finger and he said the one word in Russian I know, he goes, Niet. I go, Niet? What do you mean, Niet? And I looked at the guide and he goes, he's saying no. And I said, you can't say no, we've come all this way, I found them, I'm here to make my pictures. And he goes, yeah, but he's saying no. And the whole of the picnic went, Yit. And I was very upset, and I said, but you can't stop me from taking pictures of you. I've come all this way, I'm doing this project, iconography, respect, it's kind of recording cultures, and they kept raising their fingers, and he goes, Niet. And he said, but there's a big but. I said, well, what's the but? He said, well, why don't you stay? I said, but stay, I don't have time. Well, what am I going to do if I can't take pictures? And they all looked at me and they said, but you wanted to come and visit us. Yeah. And he said, you wanted to come and see us. I said, yeah. You wanted to come to get to know us. And I said, yeah. So what's the problem? We're inviting you to stay with us. And I said, yeah, but I'm here for pictures. And he said, yeah, but you don't need pictures to get to know us and to see us and to learn who we are. And I was brutally confronted by my own mission, what I was trying to do. Always keeping this sort of subjectivity through a lens, and I was being invited by some of the proudest, most beautiful, some of the most remote, rich people on this planet to be their guests, to live with them, to share with them, to survive with them. And I said, yeah, but why can't I take pictures? I don't understand. He said, is it about stealing your soul? And he goes, oh, no, that's all bullshit. It's, we've been filmed and photographed before, but there isn't time. There isn't time to have our picture made, because how we live here is very, very, very fragile. It's very precious, and we live on the edge. We live on the edge of everything, of our existence, and you can stay with us, but every day, every second, every millisecond of the day is about a balance. It's about a balance of survival. So we don't have time to sit and pose for pictures. In the meantime, we'll probably freeze to death. But come and live with us, come and share our existence, and see who we really are. So there's a strange sort of sadomasochistic metaphor. I had to put my cameras away, they never came out, and we lived with them for 2 weeks, and many, many things happened, and I could talk for hours about what happened. But at the very end, the last day, they said, it's okay, we'll let you take a few pictures. So for 2 hours, I made these happy snaps. And then we had a dinner, and I remember sitting down, I said, but why are you here? Why have you chosen, they're intelligent people, they're educated people, why have you chosen to live with all 40 of you in this tent? And every night we crawl into the tent together, and the only way to keep warm is you've really got to know each other. You put your hands and your feet in each other's groins and armpits, and grandma's children's, uncles, sometimes reindeer. You became this sort of human-style eating. Often there was a little bit of vodka that was shared. So you became very intimate and very warm. And he told me a story the night before we left. He said, well, Jimmy, strange enough, we choose to live here in this tent because we did have another option. It was here, in this block of flats. And I'm really beginning to lose it now. It's either the vodka or my intelligence, probably both combined. I said, explain. And he said, well, 3 years ago, the authorities came to us and they said, oh, the Chukchi, time has moved on, it's all very boring, and indigenous cultures go, well, you're the past, you're very primitive, we're developing, we're going to sponsor you to live in this city. But we're so proud of you, we're going to subsidize you. You don't have to work, you do have to do nothing. You just have to be the Chukchi, we'll give you everything for free. And the Chukchi didn't know. They had no idea what this meant. So they abandoned their culture and their traditions and they moved to the city. 6 months later, the same bureaucrat came and he looked at them and goes, well, something's changed. And the Chukchi chief said, yeah, well, we feel very different. He said, but you look very unhappy. And the Chukchi chief said, well, what is unhappy? We don't have this in our vocabulary. He said, well, your soul is gone. Your soul and your life is gone. You look half dead. And they looked at each other and they said, yeah, well, we don't do anything. We don't see our children, we don't see our elders, we drink vodka all day, we sit in front of the TV, we have no purpose, we have no function. We feel half dead. And the bureaucrat said, well, this is a problem. And then the Chukchi said, well, it's not actually a problem because our previous existence, we felt alive. So he turned around and he took them all back to where we found them on the ice. And what he said to me was, the best way to describe it is that the existence they felt here was so rich, so empowering, that if they were given an option, two options. One is to spend the rest of their life living in this, sort of, as he described, concrete purgatory with no purpose, or one more day living in this tent with their tradition, with their culture, in this environment. They would have all chosen that one more day, because that one more day was richer and more profound than anything they were ever going to experience for the rest of their life living in that concrete bunker. And it really sort of rocked my whole sort of perspective of everything. I remember traveling back in the tank and thinking, well, what's this about? Is it that we all have to run off across the ice and wear fur? It wasn't so much about that. It was more an idea of choice. These people taught to me, because of their extreme isolation, their extreme connection with what it is to be a human, they taught me that as human beings we can choose. They made the most extraordinary choice of all, to abandon all forms of relative modernity and go back to their spirit, to their source. We are here, or where I live in Amsterdam, and I'm walking around in clothing, much the same as you are. I'm not encouraging you, and I'm not about to abandon my heritage. But what I am trying to say is that if you're better in contact with yourself, physically, if you're better in contact with the nature that you live in, if it's still there, with one another, your traditions, your heritage, if you have that focus, that true balance, which the Chukchi had in the most extreme way, you can make the most magnificent choices that have ever existed. And often I myself and many people around me, and I think you understand, no, we can't do this, we can't do that, this is not possible, that's not possible. It's all a load of bullshit. You can if you feel. You can if you dare to truly feel, as the Chukchis did, and they taught me on that journey. This is in Mongolia, western Mongolia, the Altai Mountains with the Kazakhs. Now they're beautiful. Anybody who here is ever aspires to be a traveler, an adventurer, a photographer, you have to go here. These people are magnificent. They were very easy to communicate with. They're very gentle, they're very kind, but they're very handsome. They're ultimately very photogenic. So in a very short period of time, I've taken all their portraits and I've seen this magnificent landscape, these mountains, much the same as you have here in northern Pakistan, these extraordinary peaks and valleys. And I thought, wow, what if I could get these men on their horses with their eagles, high up in the peaks, making these portraits, much the same as I did with the Huli in Papua New Guinea. But again, you've got to say, come with me. It's a 4-hour walk, it's minus 20 degrees, it's cold, but let's go. It's early in the morning. The first morning we walked up and we got on top of the mountain and we were standing there and it was winding and the eagles were the wrong way around and the horses were moving and looking and I could see the valley, but it was very dark and there was no sunrise and it was very grey, and I thought, this isn't what I'd seen. This wasn't the sort of the view that I was looking at. And I said to them, okay guys, we're going to go back down. And they sort of a bit confused. They said, no pictures. I said, no pictures. It's not beautiful enough. And they said, but we're beautiful. I said, I know you're beautiful. I spent the last few weeks telling you that. But I want to put you in another layer. I want to put you in the context of the environment that you live in. And it's just not as beautiful as I know I can make it. And they said, but we're not doing this again. I said, Pete, you've got to come up with me tomorrow. Once it's not happening tomorrow. So the next morning, we sort of got up and they were a bit grumpy this time. And come on, so dragged them up 3 hours on top of the mountain. Got there and looked and, oh, Jesus, it's grey again. There's not going to be any sunrise. And I thought, well, why don't I just make the picture? I'd get out my digital camera and sort of Photoshop a sky later, turn up the contrast, and nobody's going to know because nobody was there. And I thought, well, no, it's about this purity, it's about this one image, it's that one focus, that one composition, that one climax, to use a metaphor, of composition, of seeing, of connecting. I have to do that on film. So I said, we're not going to make the picture. And then we walked down and said, well, it's not happening again tomorrow. So on the third day, I remember I was in tears, and we had a bit of vodka as always, and I didn't get the picture. I've got all this way to get this picture. You've got to help me, you've got to help me. And so the next one, I literally pulled them out of bed. Now they were very angry, but We sort of wandered up on top of the mountain, and lo and behold, it began to open up. But something happened, and I'll explain what happened. So there we are, I'm really excited. You can see I'm going standstill dance, and then the eagle's the wrong way around. I have to get the white horse in the middle. And I'm getting hyper excited, looking at the camera all up, and this is it, and I've only got 2 sheets of film left, and oh, it's beautiful. It truly is magnificent. You cannot communicate how extraordinary this is just from a picture. And you're there and you're looking, and I got the camera, and then I looked through the lens, and I thought, oh no, I've got the wrong lens in. Oh damn. So I took off my gloves and started fiddling with the lens, but the lens is on a metal plate. And I'm fiddling with the lens, and then my hand stuck to the lens because it's minus 20 degrees centigrade. So I had this sort of Mr. Bean-esque moment where I'm sort of attached to this camera, frozen on top of this mountain in the middle of Mongolia with these very handsome men looking at me and going, oh Jesus, this guy's really lost it. It's getting worse and worse by the minute. And they said, take your stupid hands off your camera. I said, can't stop. I'm stopping to the camera. I can't do anything about it. And they were about to turn around. I said, no, stay. I'll take my hands off. So I took my hands off, but I left all the skin behind. And you could look at them literally. I remember it today and looking at them, they started bleeding, and then it felt like somebody's hitting you with a hammer, and it seriously hurts. And I looked at it, and I sat down, and I burst out into tears. And I started crying, not so much for the pain, but crying for this sort of moment of realization that I'm really not sort of compos mentis. There's something wrong with me. Maybe it's autism, I'm not sure, but why go to such extremes? Why end up in such a stupid situation, crying on top of this mountain without the picture that I come here for? When I had digital cameras with me, I could have kept my gloves on action, I could have given it to somebody else to make, and they could have sprayed and prayed, and a picture would have happened. What does it matter? Why did I go to such an extreme? And I'm sort of sitting there sobbing, and then the chief in the middle said, look behind you. Behind me, 2 of the women had followed us up onto the mountain, not this lady. And they're these big women, they're beautiful women, they're big coats and big hats, and sort of waddled up to me and they looked at me, they were speaking in this low voice, and one of these women shouted at me. She opened her jacket, grabbed my hands and put them on her chest, armpits, breast, chest, somewhere there in that region. And I wasn't thinking, and I sort of instinctively fell into her, and the lady behind me opened her jacket and she bear hugged me. And they squeezed me so tight I took all the weight off my legs. And I started crying even more, and I think I started crying even more for other reasons than having frozen hands. Perhaps this was the connection I've been trying to make for many years. And this went on for 4 minutes, and then 4 minutes later I felt something on my fingers, and I'm thinking, autistic me, picture. So I sort of pushed them away without saying thank you. Wandered over to my camera and put in the last sheet of film, and bang, made a picture. When we wandered down the mountain, something dawned on me. He said, well, it wasn't about the picture. It had nothing to do with the picture. It had to do with about finally being seen, finally being held, finally being acknowledged, for having spent weeks, days, months, years, essentially the whole of my lifetime, trying to acknowledge other people. Perhaps what I was trying to do was actually be acknowledged, trying to look for acknowledgement myself. And here on that mountain, and next to that, and this is why I have to be very sensitive, it is a Muslim culture here. It's a very delicate Muslim, it's a very sensitive Muslim culture. It's not deep, it's not fundamentalist. But I don't think either there or literally here, a stranger like me would ever be encouraged to be so intimate with the people that I was. And I'm sure what happened was by showing your vulnerability, your fallibility, your eccentricity as another human being, they decided to park all forms of judgment and say, this guy really is a disaster, we better help him. And I think that's what happened. Film. Yeah. This is a few weeks later. So every picture is managed, every picture is staged, every picture is set up. No picture is left to chance. On this particular day, I didn't freeze to the camera because I learned my lesson. But it's about one picture, it's about one moment, it's about one vision. And it's about light, it's about composition. And rarely all the pictures are made with indirect light because I don't like the contrast in the sun. So you wait and you build. It's this sort of ongoing foreplay. Okay. And if it gets right, and just as the sun sets, you end up with this sort of magnificent landscape with them all standing in it. And again, it's about a connection. Very, very important 2 years ago I published a book, and I started sort of talking and being complimented and also criticized online. And I said, the one thing that really matters to me is I'm not finished. And he said, what do you mean you're not finished? You made all these pictures, they're there. And I said, no. Not only are there many more people to photograph, I feel it's a circle that I haven't completed. I have to go back to everywhere I photographed. And people said, why? I said, well, because I never showed them the pictures. Most of the people don't understand what I was doing. It was a process, it was an interaction, it was a communication, it was a connection. But they never saw what I made. So people said, well, we'd like to take you. So I've started to travel with some camera crews, and we're making a documentary about bringing the book, bringing the pictures, bringing the stories back. And the first place we went to was the Himba, northern Namibia, on the border of Angola. And it was a very, very powerful experience. I remember arriving, and the first thing they saw me, they started screaming and yelling. And I thought, oh no, I shouldn't have. They said, no, come. And I went up to them, what's wrong? They said, nothing's wrong. It's what's right. You're the first person ever. And we've been photographed and filmed by many, many people to bother to come back, to show us a respect. You really want to show us what you made, because we have an opinion too. We want to know why you make these pictures. We want to know where you use these pictures. We want to know what people think of these pictures. And next to that, we also have an opinion about who we are, how we think, whether you're doing it right or wrong. And most importantly, we're very confused. We don't know whether we should stay here. I said, what do you mean stay? I said, well, 99.9% of the Himba, they've left. They've moved to the cities. They're now living in the cities. Is that where we should go? Is that where we become rich? Is that where we develop? We don't know. But what we have here is okay. And then I said, oh, if you had only any idea, you're the last sort of bastions of this traditional culture, specific here or like these other cultures in the world, which I'm going to show you in this book. You are valuable to us because you have an understanding, you have a connection. When I was born, the world spoke 7,000 official languages. Today, there are only 2,500 of those languages still being spoken. So this heritage is disappearing like wildfire through globalization. So these people, these Himba, many others, are the last representatives of a true connection of what it is to be a human being in a cultural context. That's what it's about. But they say, no, we want to telephone, we want to come. I said, yeah, we don't want to deny you having that, but we don't want you to abandon everything that you already have. Because half of what you have is strangely what we're now trying to reconnect with. We're trying to refine it, we're trying to consolidate. And then I went on another journey. This was to Vanuatu. Vanuatu is, again, one of those extraordinary parts of the world. 83 islands in the Pacific, so 4.5 hours north, east of New Zealand. The southernmost island is an island called Tana. And on Tana live the Yakero. And the Yakero, they live in these banyan trees, the world's largest banyan trees, because they're fertilized by a volcano which they will live around. And the Yakero believe that the volcano is their god, and that's another story I'll talk to you about later maybe. And they live underneath this volcano, these magnificent sort of natural cathedrals of trees. And I sort of went back and I was very proud, and I sort of took the book, and the chief said, oh, great, come Jimmy, come, we're going to have a picture together. And I remember sort of sitting with him under the tree, and I looked at him and said, this is a special moment. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, but with the translator, there's another problem. I said, oh, Jesus, I keep having problems. What's the problem now? He goes, yeah, it's a big problem. Everybody in the village is very angry with me. I got angry, but I've come all this way, halfway across the world with these books and to make more pictures. What have I done wrong? And he goes, yeah, you gave me a book. And I said, yeah. I said, but the village is angry with you. And they're also swinging and moaning in the tree. And I said, but what have I done? And he goes, yeah, when will they get their book? I said, what? All 80 of them need a book? Yes, we all need our own book. So I have to go back here again. So if somebody wants to come with me on a journey with a container and banana boat, you know where to find me, because I have to go and... Okay, this is the last story about the tribe. This is my own tribe. Now, this is my family. This was a number of years ago. This is what they were. I was allowed to be the chief, and whatever I asked, they did. They listened to me. And they would, I could take pictures of them on elephants or on motorbikes, and even my wife pretended that I had an element of authority. But the last few years, they've become teenagers, and things are beginning to change. And this is my son, he's now 17, and he came up to me about 6 months ago, and this is a true story. It's a bit lateral, but hold on. It's to put everything into context. And he goes, Dad, I don't like you. And I go, well, what do you mean? He said, you're a bit of an arsehole. And I said, well, what do you mean? Why are you not here? I said, yeah, well, I'm doing this project, and tribes and films, and I'm earning, it's the only way I can earn money, and I'm trying to keep the house here and everything's safe. And he goes, yeah, but you're not here, you're not being my father. I said, yeah, but it's complicated. When you grow up, he said, I don't give a shit if it's complicated. You're just not there. I don't like you anymore. And I was a little bit upset when we were on holiday, and all three of my kids, I've got two other girls, 2 girls and a boy, and they're a little bit more diplomatic, but he's direct. And we were on holiday, my wife said, you know, sweetie, I've got an idea to solve this problem. She said, I'm going to stay on holiday. What? You're going to stay on? Yeah, well, I'm going to go on a yoga retreat. You talk about connection and finding your body and everything. I'm a little bit out of connection at the moment because I've been busy because you've been away the last few years. So I'm going to have this 2 weeks to myself with this very handsome yoga instructors over here. And I'm going to let you go home with the kids on your own. Kids on my own? Yeah, you're the dad, you know. And I won't be there to interfere. You can pretend to be the chief. Everything you'll say, you will have authority. It'll be good for you. Good training to try and get that balance back. You keep talking to me the whole time about balance. Yeah. What's it? Our family's out of balance at the moment. Okay, so I sort of went home and I was a little bit afraid, you know, and I'm giving a cannibal any day, but, you know, afraid of my teenage kids. And my son turned his mobile telephone off and disappeared into Amsterdam. And I was panicking, and my youngest daughter came to Dad and said, you know, what's wrong? He said, where's Narush? I said, well, he doesn't like him, so I know that, you know, but I need to check he's going to school and everything. Well, don't worry, he's fine, but he just doesn't want to communicate with you. She says, I have an idea. Why don't we, I've got a great idea, she said. He wants a new bedroom, and he wants it so that he's a bit more gothic these days. He doesn't like colour, so we go to IKEA with him. You know, IKEA is sort of a household shop, and we can take him there this evening, and you can sort of pretend you understand his changes and buy some new stuff for his room. And this is a slow way of remaking contact. Great. I'll make sure he turns up tonight, sits in the car, don't say anything to him, and we'll make a connection. So we went to IKEA, and halfway through the evening, he came up to me angry and said, you know, you really remain an arsehole. I said, what have I done? He said, you think you can buy me by taking me shopping, but not only can you never buy me, you got it wrong because it's all colour here, and I don't want colour, I want black. So he sort of ran away, and I sat down and had this sort of Mongolian moment on a mountain, although I didn't have frozen fingers, and I was on the verge of tears, and my youngest daughter said, Dad, you know what's wrong with you? You've lost all sense of humour. I said, what sense of humour? He said, well, you take yourself so serious in your books and your stories and your tribes, and it's all about just letting go and having a bit of a laugh. And I said, well, I try. She said, no, you don't. You fail. But I can help you. She said, do you remember when you were little, we used to play with you in the bathroom, we used to stick things on your bald head, toys, and we used to hit you from the side. She said, look what I found. I found some toilet brushes. I said, well, what, can I stick one on your head? She stuck one on my head, and I sat there not really thinking about it. And within a few minutes, a whole load of other kids came and ended up sticking brushes on my head. And I had this moment, I didn't see it at the time, but sort of, you know, I thought the irony of looking like a contemporary Achaean tribal leader in this sort of warehouse shop, sitting on the floor, and guess what happened? My son, he came out of the shadows with his iPhone, and he said, well, he went, wow, that's cool, and took a picture and sort of ran off. Nothing happened for 2 days. And I was about to speed dial my wife, and then all of a sudden the door shut at home, and he kept running up and said, Dad, something amazing's happened, something amazing's happened. I said, Lucy, well, what's the first time he's talked to me in weeks? And what's happened? Is Mum okay? No, it's nothing to do with Mum, it's to do with me. Something amazing's happened to me. He said, what's happened to you? Tell me. He said, look. And he showed me his iPhone, and I looked, and I said, I can't see, I've got 1.5 million likes. 1.5 million likes. So the other day when we were in IKEA, I took that picture of you with those brushes on your head, and I posted it on 9gag. 9gag, what's 9gag? It says worldwide humour sites, and I wrote underneath, the perks of being bald and bored in IKEA. 1.5 million people are like, I'm famous at my school. I said, famous for what? Nobody has ever posted anything online and been liked so much. It's amazing. He said, I've got something to ask you. Now, the role to revert, he's on his knees looking up to me, beginning to break. He says, Dad, I need your help. I need your help. I'm like, sure, son. Well, however, don't ask me to post anything online because I don't know, but anything else, I'll help you with. My voice goes lower because I'm trying to establish my authority. And he goes, I've invited the whole of the class, my 30 contemporaries, to come and have dinner with us tomorrow night. Is that okay? I said, what are we going to do? He said, you and I are going to teach them how to get liked online. Can we do that? I thought such a beautiful irony, and there's another bit of the story later, that here you go, whizzing around the world, having all these stories and all these books, but in actual fact, the true people that matter to you are your family. And the only way you actually truly connect with them is by becoming utterly vulnerable and metaphorically breaking down, becoming naked, sitting on the floor, by becoming somebody you had never expected to become your own sort of contemporary toilet brush tribal leader. But the story goes even further, and I don't have a picture. This happened a couple of weeks ago for the parents here. So here I am, and I'm sort of doing my stuff, and my wife said, have you seen Narush? It's his name. This is a true story. I don't have a picture. It's how quickly it happened a few weeks ago. So what's happened to him? He said, you better go and check what he's done to himself. And I go, well, what's he saying? He said, just go down, it's a surprise. So I walked down to his room, and he's gone and pierced his nose. And he's not only put a piercing here, he's put a sort of a small cowbell over here. He's 17, and I wanted to say something to me, he raised his finger, and he goes, don't say a word. Don't say a word. And he said, just remember what you talk about. Just remember who you photograph. Just remember you talk about individuality and authenticity. Just remember when you were 17, what you did. You ran away and you dressed as a monk for 1.5 years and you walked across Tibet. And look at what's become of you. You're not the best father, but you're okay as a human being. Yeah? Do not ever judge me for piercing my ear. You should be proud of me, because what I've done is found my individuality and found my self-expression. I'm celebrating it. And it may not be what you wanted. It didn't see why I want to be. So remember to respect me. And I couldn't say anything. My tongue was tired. Okay, am I going to spend the rest of my life with toilet brushes attached to my head? Maybe, because I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. But what I am doing is, on the strength of this, on the strength of my son, and on the strength of what happened to me when I was a child, and maybe very much in context to who we are here today, I went through a strange childhood. I was a bit of an awkward child. I was a very creative child. I'm very dyslexic, verging maybe autistic. But through those sort of handicaps, if you want to describe them, I've sort of found my way by default to a sort of a vaguely trying to be balanced adult. What I'm doing, I've set up this charity at the moment, and the charity is to enable other young people, so we call them millennials, to go on a journey, but it's a parallel journey, the journey of self-discovery, the journey of who am I, where do I fit in this world, but at the same time go off into the world like I did, become a photographer, a cameraman, a writer, a music maker, go to the root of these world's indigenous cultures and gather and collect and show, and we're going to try and create this sort of digital fireplace of cultural heritage. And this is a small film to explain what we're doing. Can you turn up the volume? We're all essentially the same, whether we're black or white, we've got long hair or no hair, we wear a turban on our head, and we dance backwards around a fire. We're all the same people. We all must feel the same. We have the same emotions. We love, we laugh, we cry, we hug, we're desperate, we celebrate. The Jimmy Nelson Foundation, it's a kaleidoscope, it's a celebration, it's a rainbow of individuality, it's a rainbow of expression, it's a rainbow of people, it's a rainbow of individuals who feel something. And through that feeling, in this case, of their culture, they want to show and share. So I really hope the Jimmy Nelson Foundation is very simply a catalyst of creative people being sent off into the world to see, to share, to feel, and to bring back this sort of creative expression of what's still out there. And say, look, do what I do, feel what I feel. It's out of this world. It has to be a catalyst for the indigenous cultures themselves to realise how precious they are, how extraordinary they are, how beautiful they are, and how little bit is still left, and how valuable it is to us today. I want to show the world that through this communication, through this extraordinary heritage that we still have, perhaps we can sort of readdress of how we actually look at each other and sort of readdress that pride. If you remember the beginning of the story, yeah? I was lying with my head in the dust, 48 years old, my driver's crying, my assistant's crying, and I'm thinking, who am I going to pray to, but I don't quite know who. Something happened, it was magic. I remember looking up at one of the boys and seeing on his face he had some scars. And I said, that can't be true. I know those scars, and those scars are of the mercy. And when the Mercy don't live in Sudan, they live in Ethiopia. What's he doing here? And I looked, I said, I can't believe that half these kids have Mercy scars. I said, Jesus, they must be Mercy. So I quietly got my book out and I opened it and I tried to get one of these children to look down. And I pointed to some pictures and I pointed to his forehead. He looked down, he put down his gun, his eyes began to clear. It's got a very long story. All these children put down their guns. And we spent the rest of the day having stories and telling and showing pictures. You cannot believe it. A few hours beforehand, you're on the verge of death. And the next minute, because of these pictures, of these children, of these people, these proud, iconographic, beautiful pictures of the mercy, these children were lost. They were in another country. They had no idea why they were high. They had no idea why they had guns. But they did have an idea that they were proud and that they belonged and that they saw those pictures. So we spent the whole of the day and the evening looking at these pictures. And then the next morning, They came with us, 10 of them sat on the roof, and they guided us to the Mercy. They spent 2 weeks protecting us. At the end of the journey, we drove all the way back to Juba, to that bar in Star Wars, and they walked us up to the plane naked with their Kalashnikovs and guided us to our chairs. Nothing can be more spectacular than that kind of experience, when it's all about having seen somebody, and even when you're on the edge, and I'm not exaggerating how close we were to being on the edge of death, but through these simple pictures of pride, of dignity, that there was a way to find a communication that took us out of that situation. And I leave you with one last picture. This, well, we go back, this is Yuri and go back a minute. This is Yuri and Yamal. And it's not my favorite picture, but a colleague of mine says, Jimmy, you have to show that picture of Yuri. And I go, why? She said, well, it's a selfie. And I said, what do you mean it's a selfie? She said, well, look into his eyes. And if you look closely into his eyes, there's a very clear reflection of me waving, standing behind the tripod, maybe with my fingers pointing to the laser lock. I don't quite remember. And she said, what's happened? You've sort of etched yourself onto his soul. They've become very much part of your life. And in that, it is a way, in a metaphorical way, a selfie. This is how I see myself through their eyes. So at the same time, I want to invert that selfie, show it and present it to you. I have very few answers, but I've seen a lot and felt a lot. And I hope through these few stories and these pictures, I've touched you in some way for you to go and look further, to help me and the rest of us discover how important these people are still to us today.